The 1970s brought us some of the most unforgettable music in history. But not everyone was thrilled with what they were hearing. Governments, venues, and censors around the world drew lines in the sand, refusing entry to artists who pushed too far. These are 12 music icons from the 1970s that were banned from performing. Number 12, the Kinks. The Kinks arrived in America in 1965, riding high on the success of You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night. The British invasion was in full swing, and the band seemed destined for the same kind of American triumph the Beatles and Rolling Stones had achieved.
You really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night.
Then everything fell apart. The band's 1965 US tour turned into a disaster of missed appearances, conflicts with promoters, and general chaos. They allegedly showed up late to Dick Clark's television show, Where the Action Is. Union officials and venue managers filed complaints. The exact details have been disputed over the years, but the result was clear. The American Federation of Musicians refused to grant the Kinks work permits to perform in the United States. The ban lasted from 1965 until 1969, 4 crucial years when British rock bands were conquering America and making fortunes. While the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and The Who toured extensively and built massive American followings, the Kinks watched from England. The financial impact was devastating. America represented the largest music market in the world. The band's albums sold poorly in the States during those years because they couldn't tour to support them. Songs like Waterloo Sunset and Sunny Afternoon became British classics, but barely registered in America. When the ban finally lifted in 1969, the Kinks returned to the US and spent the 1970s rebuilding their American fan base from scratch. They toured relentlessly throughout the decade, performing in smaller venues and working their way back up. Albums like Lola vs. Power Man and Muswell Hillbillies helped re-establish them, but they never fully recovered the momentum they'd lost. Ray Davies later said the band nearly destroyed the band. They'd been one of the biggest acts in the world in 1965, but by 1970 they were starting over in America like an opening act. The band became one of rock history's most significant what-ifs. Number 11, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin planned to perform in Singapore in 1972 during their tour of the Far East. They'd already conquered stadiums across America and Europe. Their albums topped charts worldwide, but Singapore had different priorities. The country's government had launched Operation Snip Snip, a campaign that required any man with long hair to get a haircut before entering Singapore. Authorities associated long hair with the Western hippie movement, which they viewed as promoting laziness and drug abuse. Led Zeppelin's 4 members all had extremely long hair. Robert Plant's golden curls, Jimmy Page's flowing locks, John Bonham and John Paul Jones both sporting substantial manes. They represented everything Singapore's campaign targeted. When their plane landed in Singapore, immigration officials refused to let them leave the aircraft. The band was told they could enter the country only after visiting the barbershop that had been set up at the checkpoint. Led Zeppelin declined and stayed on the plane. They were promptly sent back without ever stepping foot in Singapore. The band members found the whole situation absurd. They'd performed for hundreds of thousands of fans across multiple continents, but Singapore's government considered their hairstyles a threat to public morals. The band stayed in place throughout the 1970s and beyond. Years later, Singapore relaxed many of its strict social policies as it modernized and opened up to international tourism. But in 1972, Led Zeppelin learned that being the biggest band in the world didn't mean automatic entry everywhere. Number 10, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper's theatrical rock shows featured guillotines, gallows, fake blood, and mock executions. The Welcome to My Nightmare tour in 1975 brought these horrors to venues across America and Europe. Australia was supposed to be next on the schedule. In March 1975, Australian Immigration Minister Clyde Cameron called Cooper a degenerate who could powerfully influence the young and weak-minded. Cameron had received reports that Cooper's performances included mutilation of dolls, birds, and animals on stage. He banned Cooper from entering Australia. Cooper responded with confusion. People still thought he killed chickens on stage, something that had happened once by accident years earlier and had become an exaggerated legend. He pointed out that his shows were no more violent than Shakespeare's plays, which were required reading in schools. The band created headlines across Australia and internationally. The controversy only made Cooper more famous. Tickets for the cancelled Australian shows had to be refunded. Promoters lost money. Fans were furious. By September 1975, Cameron's successor as immigration minister, Senator Jim McClelland, lifted the ban. Cooper was officially welcome in Australia. However, the scheduled November dates were cancelled anyway because production managers deemed some Australian outdoor venues technically unsuitable for the elaborate stage show. Cooper finally made it to Australia in March 1977. When he arrived in Brisbane, he was immediately arrested over a civil claim for money owed from the cancelled 1975 tour. He spent 2 hours in his hotel room with a sheriff's officer before the matter was settled, with a payment of nearly $60,000. The 1977 tour sold out all 11 shows in just 5 hours. Cooper's arrival coincided with ABBA's only Australian visit, and photos exist of all 5 of them together. Despite the rocky start, Cooper went on to tour Australia 13 times over the following decades. The band became a footnote in his long relationship with the country. Number 9. The Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones announced their first tour of Japan in late 1972. Concerts were scheduled at Tokyo's Budokan for late January 1973. Tickets went on sale, and 55,000 sold immediately. Warner Japan issued a special commemorative edition of Sticky Fingers to mark the historic occasion. Then Japanese officials reviewed Mick Jagger's visa application. His 1967 drug conviction from the Redlands bust appeared in the file, along with a 1970 charge. Japan maintained a zero-tolerance policy toward anyone with drug convictions. On January 9, 1973, authorities officially denied Jagger's visa. The entire Japanese leg of the tour collapsed. The promoter had to refund every ticket. Fans who'd waited years to see the Stones were devastated. Keith Richards later said Japan was making a big mistake, that the ban only made people wonder what they were scared of. The ban remained in place for 17 years. The Rolling Stones, the biggest rock band in the world, couldn't enter Japan no matter how much demand existed or how much money venues would make. Japan's drug policies didn't care about rock stardom. Mick Jagger broke through in 1988 when he toured Japan as a solo artist. His performances went smoothly with no incidents. This apparently satisfied Japanese authorities about his behavior. In 1990, the Rolling Stones were finally granted permission to enter the country as a band. Their 10-night residency at the Tokyo Dome in February 1990 became a cultural event. All 550,000 tickets sold out in 2 days. When the band arrived at Narita Airport on February 6th, thousands of fans created pandemonium. The scenes echoed Beatlemania from the 1960s. The 1973 ban became one of the most famous examples of a major band being blocked from a country for decades. It showed that even the Rolling Stones had limits to where their fame could take them. Number 8. Sex Pistols. The Sex Pistols existed for barely 2.5 years, but they managed to get banned more extensively than bands that lasted decades. Their 1977 single God Save the Queen turned them into public enemies in Britain during Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee celebration. The BBC banned the song immediately. Radio 1 controller Charles McClellan called it gross bad taste. Many retail shops refused to stock it. Pressing plants wouldn't manufacture it. Independent shops that did carry it faced harassment.
No future for you.
The band tried to perform wherever they could, but venues across Britain refused to book them. Local councils banned them from municipal venues. Private venues faced pressure to cancel shows. The Pistols' UK tour became a series of cancelled dates and last-minute venue changes. When they chartered a boat on the Thames to perform God Save the Queen during the Jubilee celebrations, police arrested several band members and manager Malcolm McLaren after the boat docked. The Workers' Revolutionary Party bought 25,000 copies of the single and distributed them for free, treating the ban as political censorship. The single became #1 on the NME charts, but mysteriously appeared at #2 on the official UK singles chart, despite reportedly outselling Rod Stewart's I Don't Want to Talk About It. Many suspected the chart was manipulated to keep the controversial song from the top spot during the Jubilee. By 1978, the band had imploded. Johnny Rotten left after a disastrous US tour. Sid Vicious died in 1979. The Sex Pistols' entire career lasted less time than many bands spend recording a single album. But the bans and controversies guaranteed their legendary status. Number 7. Keith Richards. Keith Richards faced individual bands separate from the Rolling Stones' group difficulties. In 1973, the band was scheduled to perform in France during their European tour. Richards had been charged with drug possession by a French court, and authorities refused to let him enter the country. The Rolling Stones couldn't tour France without their lead guitarist. Instead, they organized 2 concerts in Brussels on October 17, 1973, at the Forest National Arena. RTL Radio chartered a train to bring French fans across the border. The shows became legendary, later released as the live album Brussels Affair. Richards' drug issues created ongoing problems throughout the 1970s. His heroin addiction was well known, and various countries used it as grounds to deny him entry or threaten deportation. The Rolling Stones' touring schedule had to be planned around which countries would let Richards in. In 1977, Canadian police arrested Richards for heroin possession in Toronto. The charges were serious enough that he faced potential prison time. The case dragged on for over a year before Richards received a suspended sentence in exchange for performing a benefit concert for the blind. The Toronto arrest nearly ended the Rolling Stones. If Richards had gone to prison, the band couldn't have continued. The 1978 benefit concert that satisfied the court became one of the most important performances of Richards' career, saving him from jail and keeping the band together. Throughout the decade, Richards remained a controversial figure that governments and immigration officials watched carefully. His reputation preceded him at every border crossing, and the Rolling Stones had to account for that reality when planning tours. Number 6. The Beatles. The Beatles were banned from performing in Israel in 1964 at the height of Beatlemania. The Israeli government believed the ban would negatively influence young people and corrupt Israeli youth. Officials worried about mass hysteria and viewed the Beatles as a dangerous cultural import. This wasn't about drugs or controversial lyrics. The Beatles in 1964 were still relatively clean-cut compared to what they'd become later. Israeli authorities simply objected to Beatlemania itself, to the screaming fans, and the worship of foreign pop stars. The ban stayed in place throughout the 1960s, even as the Beatles became the most influential band in the world. By the time they broke up in 1970, they'd never performed in Israel. The government maintained that the decision had been correct, that they'd protected Israeli youth from unhealthy foreign influence. Decades later, in 2008, Israel formally apologized for the ban. The apology came too late for the Beatles to perform together, but it acknowledged that the decision had been wrong. The Israeli government admitted the ban had been a mistake motivated by cultural fears that seemed absurd in hindsight. The 1964 ban remains one of the more unusual entries in Beatles history. They'd conquered America and most of the world, but Israel's government decided their influence was too dangerous to allow. Number 5. Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney returned to Japan in January 1980 for a solo tour. Wings was scheduled to perform 11 concerts. McCartney arrived at Tokyo's Narita Airport on January 16th with his family and band members. Japanese customs officials searched his luggage and found 219 grams of marijuana in his suitcase. McCartney was immediately arrested. He spent 9 days in Tokyo's Kosuge prison, while authorities decided what to do with him. The Wings tour was canceled. All 100,000 tickets had to be refunded. Promoters lost enormous sums of money. McCartney's bandmates and family flew home while he remained in prison. His cell measured 6 feet by 9 feet. Guards watched him around the clock. Japanese prosecutors considered charging him with intent to smuggle drugs, which could have resulted in a 7-year prison sentence. McCartney later claimed he'd forgotten the marijuana was in his luggage, that he'd simply packed it without thinking. Japanese authorities were not sympathetic. After 9 days, officials decided to deport McCartney rather than prosecute him. He was released on January 25th and put on a plane back to London. Japan banned him from re-entering the country for several years. The incident became one of the most embarrassing episodes of his career. McCartney didn't return to Japan until 1990, a decade later, when authorities finally lifted the ban and granted him a visa. He's toured Japan multiple times since then, but the 1980 arrest remains a cautionary tale about international drug laws and celebrity status. Number 4. Dusty Springfield. Dusty Springfield toured South Africa in 1964 during the height of apartheid. She became the first British artist to include a no apartheid clause in her contract, insisting that she would perform only for non-segregated audiences. She performed 2 shows in Johannesburg to mixed-race crowds. South African authorities tolerated this initially, perhaps hoping she'd leave quietly. But when Springfield reached Cape Town for her next scheduled performances, officials had decided they'd seen enough. Police escorted Springfield back to her hotel. She was held under effective house arrest for 3 days while the government arranged her deportation. Officials called her actions a blatant flouting of apartheid laws and a red rag to the government. She was banned from South Africa for breaking racial segregation laws. Springfield was deported and prohibited from ever returning to the country while apartheid remained in effect. The ban lasted until the early 1990s when apartheid finally ended. By then, she'd become a gay icon and a soul music legend. But South Africa had been closed to her for nearly 30 years. The 1964 ban made headlines and raised awareness about apartheid among British music fans. Springfield became associated with civil rights and racial equality. She'd stood up for her principles and paid the price, unable to perform in South Africa for the rest of the apartheid era. Number 3. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath's dark imagery and occult themes made them controversial from the start. Religious groups condemned them. Parents worried about their children listening to songs about Satan and demons. But the band kept touring and recording throughout the early 1970s, building a massive following. In 1970, the band was scheduled to perform in Germany. Local officials reviewed the band's reputation and stage show. They objected to the occult symbolism, the crosses, the dark theatrical elements. Several German venues canceled Black Sabbath shows, citing concerns about the band's satanic image. This wasn't an official nationwide ban, but multiple cities refused to host them. The fragmented cancellations meant Black Sabbath couldn't tour Germany properly. They'd play one city, then find the next three had canceled. The tour became financially unviable and logistically impossible. Ozzy Osbourne later recalled the German resistance as frustrating but also amusing. They were just musicians playing loud, blues-based rock with horror movie aesthetics. The German officials who blocked them acted like the band was genuinely dangerous rather than theatrical. By the mid-1970s, German attitudes had loosened somewhat. Black Sabbath eventually performed there, though individual venues and cities continued blocking them periodically. The early bands damaged their ability to build a German fan base at the crucial moment when they were establishing themselves worldwide. The German situation reflected broader fears about heavy metal and hard rock in the early 1970s. Black Sabbath's image was deliberately dark, and they paid a price for that in certain conservative markets. Number 2. David Bowie.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
David Bowie faced restrictions in several countries during the 1970s due to his androgynous appearance and sexually ambiguous stage persona. While not formally banned from entire nations, certain venues and cities refused to book him. In 1972 and 1973, during his Ziggy Stardust era, Bowie's makeup, platform boots, and gender-bending costumes alarmed conservative venue managers and local officials. Some American cities denied him venue permits. Southern states particularly objected to his appearance. Radio stations banned several of his songs. John, I'm Only Dancing was banned by many American stations for its perceived homosexual content. Rebel Rebel faced similar treatment. Some stations refused to play any Bowie music regardless of the song's content. The controversy worked in Bowie's favor commercially. His album sales increased as he became more notorious. Young people sought out his music specifically because it shocked their parents and upset authorities. Bowie deliberately cultivated this outsider status. By 1974, when Bowie retired the Ziggy Stardust character and moved toward different musical styles, some of the resistance faded. But throughout the mid-1970s, certain venues and markets remained closed to him. The restrictions were never as severe as outright national bans, but they limited where he could perform during his most visually radical period.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
Number 1. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix faced a different kind of ban in 1969 when he appeared on the BBC television show Lulu. Hendrix and his band were performing Hey Joe when Hendrix suddenly stopped mid-song and launched into a noisy instrumental version of Cream's Sunshine of Your Love as a tribute to Eric Clapton. The show's producer was furious. The band was supposed to perform Hey Joe to fill a specific time slot, and Hendrix had gone completely off script. The BBC cut their audio and pulled them off the air. Hendrix and his band were banned from appearing on BBC television. This wasn't about drug use or controversial lyrics. It was about Hendrix refusing to follow the producer's instructions and doing whatever he wanted on live television. The BBC couldn't tolerate that kind of unpredictability from performers. The ban meant Hendrix couldn't appear on one of Britain's most important television outlets for promoting music. This hurt his ability to reach British audiences through TV, though his live performances and record sales continued successfully. Hendrix died in September of 1970, less than 2 years after the BBC incident. The ban never had time to be lifted or reconsidered. It remains a footnote in his career, an example of how even the most talented musicians could find themselves blocked from performing if they refused to play by establishment rules. The 1970s showed that fame and talent didn't guarantee access everywhere. Governments, television networks, and immigration officials drew lines that even the biggest stars couldn't cross. Some bans stemmed from legitimate concerns about drugs or behavior. Others reflected cultural fears and censorship. All of them became part of rock history, proving that music's power to provoke and challenge authority was very real. If you enjoyed learning about these banned music icons from the 1970s, Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories about the artist who changed music forever.